let me have this time to go through a Tron review. There's my kitty, and she's participating. You're participating. My sweetheart kitty. Um, so I'm up late trying to take care of a kitty with diabetes, and I don't know if he's going to make it. And I was reading some stuff and thinking about some stuff about how people were trashing Tron Ares. And one of the worst things that I've read, and it's always relationship to Tron, movie critics. For those of you who are not nearly as old as I am, Tron has every Tron movie has been slammed by the movie critics. Every fucking one. And I don't know why. This guy, Anthony Alessandro, editorial director, box office director of Deadline. I don't know why this guy is hired. I don't know why he works at Deadline. Go check out his thing. There are so many things wrong with what he says in here. One of the things that he says, he comes down on the director. He says, blame the director, not the producers. I understand what he's trying to go after, like the lead producer that was fighting for Tron Ares is he's passionate. Very rarely do you have a producer who is that passionate, right? But there are more people at Disney involved than just Sean Bailey. More people. And that is how Disney has always treated the Tron franchise. Always. Let me move this down so the gain isn't peaking as much. He also goes into how every single Tron movie has been a flop or a bomb. All that stuff. He does recognize that no Tron movie has done that good, but he doesn't explain why. So this requires a lot of research, which I don't have time to go through. Which is why, usually I don't make these kind of reviews, but I can give you guys some statements that you can research on your own, if you wish to. Tron has always posted a weird kind of loss where, like, let's say the first movie. Theoretically, the first movie made a profit. No, you can't sit up there, sweetheart. But the problem with the first movie is that Disney pumped a ton of money into peripheral tie-ins, because that's what Disney does. So the budget for Tron, I know it's stated in here, but I can't find it because I'm too tired. The budget for Tron was technically $17 million. And it made $33 million domestically, which correctly considered a moderate success. But they pumped like 15 to 20 million into advertising, into products, into the Tron video games. This was 1982, right before the giant video game crash. Disney lost everything in its investment in video games. Just everything in 1982. Or 1982, 1983. And look at this, July 9th, 1982. When was the exact date of the video game? People give different dates of the video game crash. The 1983. Okay. They say 1983, but it really started in 1982. They overproduced, like Atari, everyone else overproduced video games. That includes arcade units that were using outdated, outmoded, or any out that you want to use chips. Uh, December, November 1982 is when the crash really began. Um, and the consumers weren't there to pick up the pieces. And so a bunch of cheap attempts to stabilize the market were enacted in 1982, which just made things worse. So Disney invested so much into all of this crap. Um, I mean, just finding a Tron video game is cool, knowing that it was probably the last massive scale video game production until the revival of the industry in like 1984, 1985. Um, they say that the industry occurred from 1983 to 1985. The crash was really just a year and a half, to maybe 2 years long. Maybe. But, you know, the Nintendo Entertainment System, um, Dragon Slayer. When did Dragon Slayer came up? Or Dragon's Lair in 1983. Dragon's Lair mitigated the crash in arcades. It basically kept arcades. It was one of the few arcade games that kept arcades solvent. And that's because Dragon's Lair focused on next generation visuals as opposed to beep, 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 beep pixel visuals. A lot of video games, there were a lot of arcades there. Like Sinistar actually did pretty good too. Again, 1983. This is why I say the crash really happened at the end of 1982. So Sinistar, Dragon's Lair, not Dragon Slayer, that's my favorite movie, but Dragon's Lair. These Pac-Man always, Galaga, they were always top earners. They kind of sort of kept the industry solvent and moving around. So the point is, the original Tron movie should have been seen as a massive success, but Disney plugged so much into the wrong area that it just collapsed. So Disney considered Tron to be a massive box office failure, when it wasn't really the box office that failed Tron. It was Disney. Tron Legacy. Disney promised engagement with the character Tron. They hired Bruce Boxleitner. Bruce Boxleitner had said many times Tron played a bigger part when he signed the contract than the ultimate part of Rinsler, which was nothing. Nothing. Rinsler was nothing in the movie until the very end, where he gained all of his memories back. And throughout the movie of Tron Legacy, you had massive problems of Rinsler either looking orange or red. Look at this, red. Red is authoritarian. And so in the Tron, as established in the original Tron movie, red is authoritarian dictatorship. Orange to yellow, so it's like a spectrum of color, where red is more and more authoritarian, yellow is neutral. The original Clue was very yellowish orange. Clue in Legacy sort of had really yellowish orange, but you saw him dipping into the red. Blue and white. White is more of a pure thing. Blue is more of actually, I think that was a graphical glitch between blue and white, but it's evolved. Like, white is seen as more of a pure, guided type of warrior / protector or thing. Blue is just the generic, the good guy, not necessarily, or average person, whatever. Not necessarily, you know, knight in shining armor type of stuff. But I think that white and blue was really more of a graphical glitch in a lot of ways. But people argue back and forth. I can see both sides of that particular statement. So they go into this deadline basically goes into detail on and he this is why this editor is a terrible editor. Oh, I need to find where he discusses it because I want to highlight it. Um, Here it is. Roning wanted a different script for the film other than the Wigoto one that Disney pushed to greenlight. So, here's the huge problem here. These two paragraphs here. If you ignore all of this bullshit that he puts in here, Kaczynski, who would later deliver unto the world Top Gun, Maverick, and F1, constantly doing shit like this, fluffing up the article. You pick out what's really being said. Because he really tries to confuse the hell out of the reader. Kaczynski was the one that Disney wanted to hire again for Legacy. But Kaczynski didn't friggin' understand Tron, and every goddamn viewer out there knew it. That's why Legacy barely pulled break even. I enjoyed Legacy, don't get me wrong, but it didn't even have half the plot of the first Tron movie. It's just a music video, which is funny because the first Tron music, there's notoriously a horrible buzz in the background. So it's not even a music video. It's a lot of sections are dull and boring because there's no real music in it. But he turned it into a music video with Daft Punk, which is fine. It was a good music video. I expected it as much when they kept promoting Daft Punk. I said, okay, well, I'm going to go see a light show and a music video. And I did. He was never attached. There was no contract. He was never directly asked by Disney. He was never friggin' attached. So the only director that they attached to it was Roning, right? So they greenlight a script without communicating with the director. They finally get the director on board. The director says, yeah, I'll do it, but the script's not good. Disney says, no, we want you to shoot the script. And Roning says, the script's not good. I want to change the script. So between Roning and the script, they wind up having to reshoot an entire month. Disney originally wanted Tron's experience and whatever, to be cataloged. Except at the end of Tron Legacy, Tron goes from being red, reddish orange, back to his colors, which means that he regained all of his memories from the light, from the memory, from the identification disc, right? That is what that disc is. That's what it represents in the Tron universe. Memories, function, and directive. This guy clearly doesn't understand that. That's one of the few things that Kaczynski got right from Tron, is that disc, the identity disc, as part of a computer, it represents the part of the computer that gives the programs basically their impetus to function. And you see that in Tron Legacy. By the way, this is going to be spoilers. turn off this review right now if you don't want to read spoilers. Tron Ares, you actually see that in action when the girl is brought in forcibly, and then her program is suspended, and then she is given her disc, right? And she functions properly. So Roning, however you pronounce that, did it right. Kaczynski sort of did it right. And the problem is they wanted Tron to somehow I don't know. To come into the world as Ares and then discover himself that he's Tron again. Okay, well, at the end of Legacy, he gets all of his memories back. So they wanted to undo the last 5 minutes or the last 15 minutes of Legacy, and then say, "Oh, now he's Ares. Oh, now he's getting his memory back." So that's the original script. And before anyone says, "Well, how do you know that?" Well, I'll tell you why. 4 to 5 months of shooting, and they only redid 1 month. So 4 months of shooting and 1 month, or 5 months of shooting essentially, and 1 month of reshoots. So 4/5 of the movie you see on screen with Jared Leto is the script that Disney originally planned to be, where Ares would be Tron. 4/5. So Ares in Tron Ares is always red. How do you go from Tron regaining his memories at the end of Legacy to Tron suddenly again being authoritarian and under the control of Dillinger? That's way too much back and forth. Roning was right. You could not have had the movie that Disney greenlit and make Ares Tron. You just fucking can't. It's a massive plot hole. They would have to go back and redo the ending of Legacy to make that work. There's a reason why Kaczynski was not tapped to be the director. I mean, he was not tapped. Helland was not asked to come back. He never got word. So almost all of what this guy said is utter bullshit. Where he says blame the director. None of this crap that he thought was going to happen was ever going to happen. These people have gone on the record in interviews saying, "No, we weren't asked to return. We knew nothing about the third movie." Kaczynski maybe tried to pitch a third movie idea of Tron leading a rebellion, which is actually suggested in Ares. Or something happened. Tron and all the people from Encom servers in Legacy somehow are free. You don't see them. You don't hear about them. They are not on the original grid in Flynn's grid either. Now, here's another thing. Kaczynski kind of screwed up. He had Tron and Legacy. Tron Legacy takes place on Encom servers, not the grid. The grid is actually Flynn's private servers. And that's where Tron actually existed. Flynn's private servers. So, Kaczynski kind of screwed up because he moved programs from the private servers to Encom for some reason without explaining it. Tron Ares revisits the grid, Flynn's private server, and it's for somebody who saw Tron when they were little to see the exact same artwork. They didn't update it. They used the same exact style of art. It's fucking awesome. Maybe you call it nostalgia all you want. But when a director like Roning recognizes something that's cool and puts that in the movie, he's saying to all the fans, hey man, I know what you want. You want the actual hand-drawn light cycle. You want it drawn the way it was drawn in 1980, 82. And you want to see that hole in the wall. And you want to see the grid presented as it was. And I'm also going to shoot it the way it should be shot. That is awesome. So I'm not blaming Roning for anything. Roning knew that Tron wasn't going to work as Ares. I mean, that you're just repeating what happened in Legacy with Rinsler. Tron, ooh look, this is Rinsler. Oh wait, surprise reveal. Rinsler is really Tron. Disney wanted to do the same bullshit with Tron Ares. Hey, this is Ares. Oh wait, Ares is really Tron. And that seems to be the running problem with Disney's boardroom. Disney's boardroom is run by morons who say, this worked, so we're going to make it work again by doing the exact same thing. And it's not new. After Walt died, Disney did that over and over and over. And one of the greatest examples I have of Disney doing that over and over and over is Herbie, the love bug, and then Herbie Goes Bananas. Basically, but Herbie Goes Bananas is basically like the same script, only half of the original one. Pirates of the Caribbean, although they did put a different twist on basically the same script in a couple of the movies. They tried to do that again. Then there's the idiocy of Star Wars. They just copy the same goddamn script. Disney has a problem doing that. The boardroom has a problem doing that. Roning was saying, you don't want the script. You don't want the script you want to do. You want this. Apparently they butted heads. And, in my other review, I said I have no idea how this movie was a $180 million budget. Well, reshoots are like between 50 and 60 million. A month worth of reshoots is between 50 and 60 million. They did a month worth of reshoots. It's between 50 and 60 million. And I said, this movie was maybe 100 to 130 million at best. Yeah, that's exactly what we saw. The reshoots were what bumped it up to 180 million. And then Disney puts it in the... This guy also doesn't seem to recognize that Disney put it in the worst goddamn month or period of the year ever. And that's between the first and second week. The beginning of the first week and the end of the second week of October. There's a reason why horror movies are almost never released in October. October is a month of death. And it's a month of death for movies because people are doing shit. Work-wise, you're preparing for the fourth quarter, which is going to be the biggest push of the year. You have to prepare 1 to 2 months ahead of time for Black Friday. It doesn't matter whether or not you're in consumer work or what. You have to push for Black Friday. You have to push for transition to December. You have to push for transition to January, the end of the fourth quarter. You have to get all of your sales. That includes real estate. That includes shipping. That includes any sort of customer service job. That includes restaurants, because restaurants have to prepare for the big meals and the big planning and the New Year's. Hotels too. Every goddamn industry in the world is preparing and getting things ready at the end of September on through October for the final quarter of the economic year and the year itself. That's why October is shit. nobody has time to go see the fucking movies. There is no point in the history of movies where October is a good period to release a goddamn thing unless you know it's going to fail and you're going to take a tax break. So, let's also go into why Roning was right and Kaczynski was wrong. This is a Reddit thing. Just go to this Reddit site. There are a lot of people that talk about the problems with Tron Legacy. Uh, this guy is like, he doesn't get half of anything. But a lot of people in this thing look at Tron Legacy and say, well, you know, they kind of screwed up with transporting characters that were on Flynn's personal grid onto NCOM servers, because Kaczynski apparently didn't understand that there was a difference. He didn't understand why Tron couldn't be on NCOM servers. Why would Flynn create a brand new Clue program to build a world when Clue was designed to find bad code and or code of any kind and expose it, because Clue was essentially a private investigator in the grid. So he recreates Clue, still calls him Clue. Why would he call him Clue? He gives him a completely different directive. There's a lot about Legacy which is wrong because Kaczynski did not understand the basic functions of each of the programs. And he puts Tron in there for what reason? The Clue that is in Legacy has no idea what Tron is. Tron is a completely different entity from the original Flynn server. Why would he be captured by Clue and tortured and made to be a bad guy called Rinsler? There's a lot wrong with Legacy because they don't explain it worth shit. And Disney tried to tie it in with a cartoon, and the cartoon had to deviate so much from Legacy that it was canceled. I'm not even sure if they finished the storyline in the cartoon. It was so off the wall wrong in terms of canon, and yet it was supposed to be a direct tie-in, which is a shame. That's what I say. That's why I say that the big boardroom producers at Disney should be permanently removed from any sort of creative projects. They don't understand what the hell they're doing. So, there were a lot of problems in Legacy because Kaczynski didn't grasp the material, and that's why Kaczynski was never asked back. The handful of boardroom people that wanted Kaczynski back, they never even asked him back. He was never attached to Tron Ares. And then these people bitch about Tron Ares, and they clearly don't understand 90% of what the movie was about. They referred to Jared Leto being like a Jesus character. This is where I don't understand what has happened to reviewers in general. Reviewers used to have to understand mythology, creative literature, messages in literature, you know, comprehension, iconology. You go to school to become a critic. Everybody has an opinion, but a critic is someone who is at least some sort of historian or journalist that grasps what things are about. You can't talk about the message of a movie if you don't understand the history of messages in human creative production. You know, this exemplifies what's wrong, what I consider to be what's wrong in a lot of society, in terms of creative exposition. You know, it used to be that people would join book groups to exercise their intelligence. Or I've gone and seen Bible groups where people discuss the imagery in the Bible in depth. What were people trying to say? Whether or not they believed in the Bible or religion or whatever, the Bible groups I've walked into, they've got more on. I mean, I'm not religious here, but they've got more understanding of what iconology is and messages sent through the communication of the best-selling book of all time than the average movie critic anymore. And that didn't used to be that way. It used to be that movie critics, the good ones, they would at least be able to connect the dots through human history and evolution and communication of messages through the medium of movies. That's what cinema is about. Saying, I don't understand the character, it just didn't grab me. What don't you understand about the character? What was the iconology? What was the motivations? What was it? Oh, it just didn't grab me emotionally. Who gives a fuck about your emotions? You give a fuck about your emotions. I'm glad you give a fuck about your emotions. But don't use your emotions as if they are a valid point of criticism for the movie if you can't articulate what you're emotional about. So, I'm using this Reddit site because of that. He left for personal. This is bullshit. This guy didn't. I don't even think this guy watched this movie. Kentuza. I don't even think he fucking watched the movie. So I'm gonna go into some spoilers. And so first of all, let's get back to the image. Why Tron could never have been Ares. Ares begins the movie as part of the Dillinger server and Dillinger Corporation. There's no way in fucking hell Dillinger would want to, let alone could, find a program named Tron from Incom servers, especially after Tron went through that transportation light, which is probably the hookup between the Incom servers and Flynn. I'm only guessing because they never explained it at the end of Legacy. Why would Dillinger look for a program named Tron and rename him Ares? Why? This is the grandson of the original Dillinger, David Warner. There's a reason why that was not in Tron Ares. It would have been fucking stupid. So Dillinger Corporation is the authoritarian corporation. They're in red. Red is authoritarian. They're the control group. And in a computer, that fits. Master control program needs to be authoritarian in order to keep all the functions and methods and programs in the right direction. That makes sense. And red would be, or orange, I'm guessing, would be the helper methods. Essentially, the neutral. So in Ares, what you have is a program that's built to adapt and experiences water, which is a reoccurring theme. In iconology, water is the source of life. In Tron, water is also the source of life. Water empowers Tron. Right? Empowers all of them. So in the grid, in Tron, I don't know if water is in Tron Legacy or not, but I know in the original Tron it is. See, Legacy was such a music video. I am so glad Kaczynski had nothing to do with Ares. because he missed the iconology of the first Tron, or at least didn't present it in a way that was memorable. I can't even remember if there's water in Legacy. I can't. I'd have to watch it again. But I do know there's water in Tron because of that one scene where they reach down to drink the electric, flow, electron flow, basically, which is essentially water. It's life for the programs in the grid, just like water is life for people in the real world. So in the real world, Ares, when he's brought in, it rains. And you see his program glitch a little. Because water introduces life and concepts and the idea of randomization into his brain, or into his program, into his function. It's pretty powerful because it also happens with Athena. And Ares, throughout the thing, both Ares and Eve, Eve says, Ares says, "Can I trust you?" several times, and Eve says, "I don't know. I don't know if you could trust me." She's actually being honest to a point, to a fault, where she says, "I don't even know who you are. I don't know what you think you can trust about me, but I can tell you what I will do. But I may have to turn on you because you're still authoritarian program. You got the red light on you. You work for Dillinger." Basically, is essentially, that's all the subtext under what she's saying. He asks her 3 times, and each time she answers truthfully. And then he decides, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do the right thing. That's demonstrated in his actions. And even at this happens again later. And basically, he asks her if she can trust him, and she says, "I don't know if I can trust you." So these characters don't immediately trust each other, which is like the first time in a long time where I've seen a movie address that terrible trope of, trust me. Do you trust me? Yes, I trust you. As opposed to Terminator 2, come with me if you want to live. Like, trust the situation, not the person, is the way it should be. That's why these messages are always the most powerful when they're done right. Come with me if you want to live. All right, I'll come with you if you want to live, which is the same thing that Kyle says to Sarah Connor. Then Arnold says it to Sarah Connor in Terminator 2. Not only is it a connecting link between those two movies, but it's not saying, "Do you trust me?" Well, why the fuck should I trust you? I just met you, Kyle. Why should I trust you? You're a killer robot. Go with me if you want to live. Okay, I can trust that. I can trust the situation. They do that correctly in Tron Ares. She and he both trust the situation based off of their mutual responses to the situation and their behavior toward or against what's going on. That's what you can trust. That is portrayed properly in Tron Ares. Secondly, Tron Ares is the biblical story of Genesis, essentially, only rewritten slightly. The plot is Ares is created by Dillinger's grandson, the first Dillinger's grandson, and it only works if he's created by the first Dillinger's grandson. That's why it doesn't work if him being Tron. And here's another thing about Kaczynski. Look at these images for Tron. You can't tell if he's got orange, yellow, or red. Sometimes he's red. And that's the problem I had with Legacy. Is like he went back and forth. Does not make sense. He's supposed to be orange, I think. And then yet there are pictures, and even in Legacy, if you watch the movie, he goes red. I'm sorry. I just wanted to point that out because I didn't point it out earlier. So Kaczynski didn't really grasp it. Anyway, so the biblical story of Genesis, right? Um, all the angels create the universe, essentially. Well, depending on which part of Genesis you read. Uh, God says, let there be light, there's light. God creates the universe. God creates the world in 6 days. Oh, wait, the angels did too. Depending on the passage you read, depending on also whether or not you get the idea. Um, Dillinger, Dillinger's grandson, essentially, he creates the Dillinger server. Or did he? He probably stole it from his grandpa, which is heavily suggested by Dillinger's daughter, who's the mother of the grandson of Dillinger, right? So they've got a grandfather who's David Warner. He's passed away. He wasn't in the movie. Um, the daughter and the grandson. The grandson's somehow in control of everything. Uh, I would like to say it's unbelievable, but given what I know in the tech industry, it's totally fucking believable. Little shits like that are in charge of stuff where they don't know anything. Um, so, he creates. This is another reason why I don't think that he could have. Ares can't be Tron. He would have to have been smart enough to hack into Encom servers, and he's clearly not, because the people at Encom clearly are far more confident and competent at hacking than he is, and they basically destroy him at the end of the movie. So there's no way that Ares could be Tron. So let's say that if you want to say that Ares has some part of Tron, that's fine. But I'm glad that the runing changed it, because it does not make sense the way Disney originally wanted it. So Dillinger John Dillinger is in charge of the server and everything. He has his character. He's trying to sell to the military. Says, my warrior, I can regenerate him. He'll die, regenerate, die, regenerate, die. For whatever reason, now this goes to the folly of Dillinger. Dillinger is lying about the capabilities of the program and the ability to bring the program through 3D printing into the real world to these generals. Stupid. But it's actually in character. So I don't even see that as a plot hole. I see that as the reason why this character is going to lose the fight at the end of the movie. He lies about the 29-minute limit, when what he should be saying is, for 29 minutes you get an undefeatable warrior that can accomplish anything, and you won't have to worry about getting him out alive. That to me is incredibly frightening. The perfect assassin. Send them in, let them die. No chance of being compromised. But he doesn't. He lies to him in order to get a bigger contract, to claim an entire standing military can last infinitely. I actually love that, because that shows that Dillinger's grandson will never settle for what he has. Just like the grandfather. The grandfather didn't want to settle for what he had. He had to steal from someone else. Dillinger's grandson has to steal from someone else. Dillinger, in the first movie, he had impressive types of programs and whatnot, and able to do things, but he had to constantly steal and acquire, like the Borg, in order to make himself better and bigger. It's what thieves do, especially in the tech industry. That's why he's such a captivating villain for people that know anything about programming, because that's how people act really bad people act in the tech industry. They do that all the friggin' time. Apple did that a lot. Microsoft did that. Specifically to go after Apple. That was what the whole settlement was about later on. So Dillinger's grandson is doing exactly what Dillinger did in the first movie, and he's doing a similar thing in a slightly different way. That's why I love that. He's flawed from the start. You see how he's flawed from the start, but he's pursuing that flaw at any cost necessary. That's why he has to lose. So his angel. So Dillinger presents himself as God. He even refers to himself as God. His angel is Ares, named after another god. Athena's named after another god. Um, Ares gains self-awareness because he's exposed to water and the chaos of it and the beauty of it. He says, okay, I've suddenly got life breathed into me. God didn't breathe life into me. Water did. You know, the universe, the essence of the universe, what created the universe breathed life into me. Basically is what Ares is realizing. And he more or less says that, you know, this is all in, various aspects of this are in the dialogue. He decides that killing people's wrong because they won't come back. And so he betrays his God. So it's kind of like, you know, so you have the biblical story of Genesis and the rebellion in heaven, only it's Genesis as if told by Satan, who believes that he's God, and his lieutenant, instead of God and Satan, right? Satan and his lieutenant. So Ares, it flips the script on that. And I enjoyed that. I thought it was kind of cool. Ares is not Jesus, though. For all this bullshit of Jared Leto looks like Jesus because he has a beard and long hair. Jesus fucking Christ. Ares is a classical Greek hero, though. If you want to compare him to anybody, compare him to Perseus. Right? He goes on a quest and has a happy ending. The only character in Greek mythology that has a happy ending. Right? He slays the Medusa at the end. For anyone who wants to try and argue about Medusa being a victim, that was a later Roman story. The original Greek stories, she was definitely a villain. She wasn't. Yeah. So just for clarification, because I know some people throw a fit about Medusa. There was only one story where Medusa was raped by Neptune, not even Poseidon, by Neptune. That was the Roman version, 8th century. You got BCE stories from the Greeks. No rape, none of that, none of that. She was evil. She was down outright evil. Of course, there is an idea that she may have come, that the original myth of Medusa may have come up from Africa, but I haven't seen any actual original stories to that. May be true. I haven't looked into it enough to know yes or no. I just haven't been able to find it on my own. So, Ares is essentially Perseus, down to the point of when Athena is ordered to go after him, he has to kill her in order to save Eve, who you could consider to be Andromeda, you know, somebody like that. So he kills the monster to save the person that needs to be saved. Eve has basically the secret of everlasting life. Because she sees the code. She sees the code, so it's buried in her memory. So that's why Athena wants to bring Eve back to dissect her memory, killing her, getting the secret for everlasting life. And everlasting life is, they call it permanence, and it means that a program can exist permanently in the real world. So, it's kind of cool in that it mixes the biblical story with like the quest for the Holy Grail, biblical story of Genesis with the quest for the Holy Grail, and the whatever you want to call what Perseus went through. And then at the end, of course, you're told everlasting life, permanence, it's impermanence. It's not really permanence because you only get one go around. And it's really kind of cool because when Ares is presented with that information, he says, I see now. In other words, there's no everlasting life. It's a chance to be alive. And Ares is asked once again, are you sure you want this? And Ares says, I have to save some people. So he sacrifices immortality on the grid for a single life in the real world to save somebody who's trying to save and do good in the world herself. That's a really cool plot, I think. I think it's really neat, interesting. What would you do? Would you say, you know what, I'd like to go back, but I'm fine with 29 minutes? He says, no, I'll take it, knowing that I won't survive if I die. You know, if I'm die and fall apart, I'm gone. That's it. I get one chance. I'm doing it anyway because it will make me a better person in order to do this to save this one girl. Continue that on to Eve at the end of the movie. This is why I really hated those people on the Reddit thing. At the end of the movie, and I'm just moving things around so you see different stuff on the screen. There are two really interesting things that happen. One is Athena, because she was exposed to water. She had the same chance that Ares had. She says to Ares, I just followed my directive. Ares says, I know. She says, you didn't. He says, I know. She says, why? He says, I don't know. It's basically it. Really well done between those characters. And then she dies. What you need to understand is before that, she made it clear to Dillinger's grandson she was in charge. She no longer feared him. He could never harm her again. She was more powerful than he was. She had control over the systems, but she still chose to try and go after Eve to kill her. She still chose her own directive. She could have sided with Ares and gotten that permanence code and and been, free like him to do whatever she wanted in the world. But she wanted to stay true to her objective, or directive. Both are the same, regardless of the consequences. She had self-awareness, and she used it to make a decision that was not necessarily a good decision. He had self-awareness, and he made it. He used it to make the decision that was essentially a good decision. So you have that moment in there. And then at the very end, it's clear after the month-long of reshoots, the director knew there was not going to be a sequel to Tron. Because this movie was canned, it was delayed, and everything. So for his reshoots, he decided to end it. And he ended it by having Eve cure cancer. Eve, after the biblical woman who gave birth to, depending on how you read the Bible, either all or part of the human population, brought life to humanity, cures cancer. That's the end of the Tron franchise, from what I could see. You can't cure cancer. You can't say, I cure cancer, and have anything follow after that. She cured the big C, the leading cause of death in the world. She cured it. She's a god, basically, at this point. So she cured cancer. When they talk about Sean Flynn, or whatever the character's name is, son, let's see here, Tron Legacy. What's the character's name? Sam Flynn. Sam Flynn, and Sam Flynn is, Ares mentions, he is living his life with his dream girl from the grid. Okay. Or Incom servers, technically. Okay, well, that's a happy ending. He ended those character storylines. When they escaped Legacy and they rode off into the sunset, that was the end of their story. They rode off into the sunset. Happy ending. End of story. The only thing that he doesn't explain, that this director doesn't explain, is what happened to Tron and all the programs on the original grid. What happened? And I think the director left that open, so if they do a Tron movie and they show Tron and the other programs from the original grid, they can do it without discarding Tron Ares. And I think that was a stroke of genius, because he both knew Tron is coming to an end, but just in case, maybe we'll have another Tron movie in another 10 or 15 years. And finally, the final ending for the biblical epic. John Dillinger puts himself into the grid. So he casts himself from what the program saw as heaven, and that is the real world, in order to escape punishment. Dillinger's grandson, I think his name is John Dillinger, I might be wrong. Let me look that up. Julian Dillinger. I kept saying John. Julian Dillinger. Julian Dillinger casts himself from heaven into hell, which is the Dillinger servers. After Encom destroyed Dillinger servers, when he enters Dillinger servers, it looks like a burning red landscape. It definitely looks like hell. And then he takes the program of Dillinger servers. The server offers him the original disc from his grandfather, the original identity disc. He takes that identity disc, and then the original suit, the Sark suit, the suit is put on Julian's body, essentially crowning him the king of hell, ruler of no one, of a destroyed landscape. That's the mythology that's presented in Tron Ares. It has a cohesive story, a cohesive plot line that follows through several different archetypes, but they fit together nicely. So all these people would say, well, I don't know what really was going on with Eve, or why didn't they have Sam Flynn come back and kick butt? All these people that say this stupid crap, they're not paying attention to the message that's being sent with the script. That's why I like Tron Ares, and I like it better than the other Tron movies. The effects are also better. What I hate about it, the sound blew my goddamn ears out. I am sick and tired of these sound mixers that decide to have 180 decibels for the music and then have the whispers down to 40 or 20 decibels so you can barely hear it. Oh, I fucking hate that. It is incompetence in music design. And I've been in heated arguments with music directors and designers who say, but that's the realistic sound of the real world. Listen, I'm watching a fucking movie. I don't need a jackhammer on the movie screen blowing out my eardrums, doing permanent damage to them, because that's how loud jackhammers are in real life. I don't need that. And I don't need to be straining to hear someone whispering to someone else when you got a close-up on their goddamn lips in the theater. I want to hear what they're saying. I get that they're whispering. I don't need the whisper to be 0 decibels on a meter with the jackhammer at 3,000. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you get what I mean. And more, the biggest complaints in movie theaters are bad sound mixing. And all these movie directors say, Nobody knows what bad sound mixing is. Nobody knows what bad sound mixing is because we know what it is. We got the degrees. We're telling you how you should hear the sound. Oh, God, I hate music directors like that. I just hate them. I hate them. So anyway, That's the only thing that I hate about Tron Ares. The sound is awful. And Disney interfered. Disney executives need to get away from Tron. They need to let one executive who loves Tron hire the people that he wants, and then have the people that he wants write the script, and make sure that the script and the people understand and love Tron as much as they do. As far as I'm concerned, Roning, or however you pronounce his name, he understood Tron because he actually fixed a lot of the canon issues with Tron Legacy and the original Tron. He brought everything together. He explained there were multiple different servers. He explained it's possible to travel between them, and he also explained what happened to Kevin Flynn. And he provided a great mythology to the ending, and I think that's also pretty cool because you had mythology in the first Tron movie. You had Zeus, you know, a couple other characters. So I liked what Tron Ares. I thought it was fun. It was engaging. If you can't feel it because you don't understand what's going on, then this movie, which is a lightweight script, is above your pay grade. That's fine. Some movies are above people's pay grades. That's the purpose of cinema, to provide different pay grades, different levels. Anyway, I love Tron Ares. I think it's fantastic. I think it's better than the others. I think they're all about, within the same level for me, about 8 out of 10, and to me, 8 out of 10 is a good watch. Anyway, love y'all. Take care.